An arcade indie darling with a competitive slant, on this Speed Pass, let's see if this bar and convention staple cabinet game can successfully make the leap to consoles with the remastered Killer Queen Black. I've played the arcade version of Killer Queen once before, after spending years watching people absolutely crowd around the cabinets at every MagFest and cheering crowds gathering around it. My first experience was pretty confusing, as my team consisted of 5 people who barely knew what was going on, facing off against a team so coordinated that they probably were in a league somewhere. It's not the kind of game that you want to jump into blindly, but it's pretty easy to understand once the rules are laid out. However, Killer Queen Black does change up some of the original game's playstyle, so I'll be sure to go over the basic arcade rules and how the console version differs once it comes time. Graphically, the game did get quite a bit of an overhaul. The original arcade game is a lot less detailed, with fairly primitive-looking sprites, and detailing that might make them harder to pick out in the absolute chaos. They're a lot more distinct now, and everything gets just a bit larger with a little bit more detail. Almost an 8-bit to 16-bit kind of glow-up. The stages are also varied now instead of the original single stages, but all of these new stages are still single screen. The snail's end goal, originally a net, is now a finish line ribbon for some reason. Music and sounds received the strongest updates, replacing the original game's very 80s arcade-sounding blips and bleeps with more appropriate-sounding but still stylized sound effects. Another 8 to 16-bit upgrade overall, with a major upgrade being the soundtrack, as the original doesn't have one, and Killer Queen Black has a very heavy metal soundtrack courtesy of video game-themed rock band Power Glove. This gives you quite a bit more fanfare for each victory, as well as an intense power metal song for the title screen. The matches themselves remain mostly musicless, save for some guitar riffs on kills and a looming drum track when a victory condition is close to completion. Of course, understanding how the game works is key to enjoying it, and if you ever just jumped into an open space on a Killer Queen cabinet, you'll likely be overwhelmed with everything going on. Making sense of the sprites and objects is key to at least functioning in this game, and Killer Queen Black is kind enough to include a tutorial to cover its basics. Note to Killer Queen arcade players, not everything is played in the same way. As mentioned, Killer Queen Black has a single screen layout similar to the arcades, however, it's not the arcade stage at all, instead giving you a small variety of stages to choose from. The single screen layout can also have a wraparound style. Walking off the left side of the screen, you'll appear on the right. Fall through the bottom of the map, and you'll drop from the top. These can make some pretty useful ambush spots for people who aren't completely aware of the map at all times. There are 2 playable classes. Sorry, MMO mindset's still a little hard to shake. You can choose to be either one of 3, down from the arcade's 4, worker drones, or your team's queen. Worker drones are vital, but the most lax of all the options. As a worker, you can only walk, jump, and collect or throw berries as your basic options. You can take these berries back to your base and jump into a hole to fill it up. Once every hole is filled, you'll achieve the economic victory for your team. Workers can also ride the giant snail to their side of the stage to achieve a snail victory. The snail will only stop if its rider is killed or jumps off, or if an enemy worker sacrifices himself to be eaten, temporarily halting the snail as it eats. You can also choose to take a berry to one of the gates around the stage. These gates usually transform your worker into a soldier. Gates can either be untagged or neutral, in gray, or tagged by your queen to change them into your color. Unlike the arcade, the gates now have a choice of new weapons instead of just the soldier class, including a morning star, a laser gun, and the original arcade's speed upgrade, which will keep you as a worker but let you move around far faster. Any of the soldiers can fly by repeatedly pressing B. The soldier can also use their weapon by pressing A, so the joust or balloon fight style combat of the arcade version is now more based on button pressing to make online play a bit easier to translate. Swords do a short forward dash, morning stars rotate around you with a wind-up, and guns fire a massive laser horizontally with a long cooldown per shot. When killed as a soldier, you'll respawn as a basic worker. Workers also basically get to respawn infinitely as long as the match is still going on. The queen plays a lot like the sword soldier, with 2 distinct differences. You can still dash stab by pressing A, but you can also press down to dive attack everything below you if you're in the air. Queens can only respawn twice after being killed, and if a queen loses all her lives, the team with the surviving queen wins with a military victory. As a queen, it's your job to tag gates, kill enemies, and avoid death whenever possible. With all this in tow, the game becomes a mad dash to victory, strategizing on the fly and working to resolve any number of situations. It's the same appeal of the arcade game, getting a team of people together to face off against each other in a very easy to understand esport, which can be as fun to watch as it is to play. You can be working on an economic victory as a worker, but notice the enemy team is getting the snail closer to their side, so maybe you'll shift gears to stop the snail by sacrificing your worker to buy some time, or becoming a soldier to kill the rider. If your queen is on her last life, you can go soldier to protect her and attack the enemy queen, or speed up berry collection while the queen plays keep away. It's fascinating stuff in action. Also, I am not and never was really a metagamer, so if either of those strategies sounds completely batshit to you, I am 100% sorry, I'm just making stuff up on the fly. I tend to think on my feet in PvP games, even if I end up tripping over them most of the time. Online works well enough, but quick play matches aren't very populated, usually filling out most of the teams with bots. Half the time if I am playing against a team, it's a very coordinated team that you can tell is playing from the same switch. It is nice you're allowed a preference of a worker or queen, with a third option of either, but know that if there are not many other players in the queue, you might be forced into a queen versus queen player match, while all the workers in your matches are filled with bots. Quick play allows players to drop in and drop out, so expect these players to come and go, or end up joining you, or you joining, in the middle of an ongoing set of matches. With that, I feel Killer Queen Black is deserving of a go recommendation, but it might not be exactly what arcade fans want, and the experience is far better with a solid group of friends. Online play at least can get you the experience of player battles without a solid group. If you don't think this kind of game of rapid strategy and PvP team-based combat is for you though, I can guarantee it probably isn't, and just adjust that recommendation accordingly. If you want the Killer Queen experience at home, and don't want to fork over the massive amount of money for the cabinets, Killer Queen Black isn't an exact copy of the original, but it's close enough to get your fix if you can't locate a place that has one.